Okay, we are going to do a pretty brief lesson on Porter's generic strategies. This is a toolkit lesson, really important as we start to think about theory within our internal assessments. So make sure you download the lesson from the toolkit. There's also a template if you'd like to take notes in that. Actually, if you could download the template and then within the template, write some prompts I'm going to give you and bring to class. So I can see that you have those written in. You can download it into Notability, print it if you'd like, whatever works best for you. All right, so Porter's generic strategies. Porter believed that to have a competitive advantage, a business has to take some sort of direct strategic plan that makes them stand out from competition. And there are several different ways that businesses can do this. And Porter said that a business should adopt one of these four methods. So you see, it looks like there's only three here, but we have two under the focus. So we have four general strategies that a business can use to sustain that competitive advantage: cost leadership, differentiation, focus. Cost focus, differentiation, focus are the two types under focus. And so Porter said a business should adopt one of these four strategies to have a competitive advantage and have a sustainable business model. Again, here are those four strategies. And here is a matrix where we are going to want to learn and know. This is a very, very popular exam question for IB. This is something new they added to the syllabus when they rewrote it. It was on a very old syllabus years and years ago. Then it dropped off and now it's back. So the way to understand this as easily as possible, and this kind of makes a little confusing, I guess, for some students. So I'll teach it and then we will definitely go through examples. And that's why I need you to come in with examples when you come into class. All right, so the first thing you need to understand is the business a niche market or a mass market type of business? So that is the top of our matrix. If it is a niche type of business, you are going to see it fall under one of the two focuses. So the end word is going to be focus. If it is a mass market, you will not see focus there. At this point, we should all know what a niche versus a mass market is. And so we are going to skip through those definitions, but understanding that if it says focus after it, we are looking at niche versus a mass market over on this right side. The second thing you're looking at is what is my competitive advantages of the business? If you're looking at this, am I looking and focusing on how unique my product is, quality of my product? Or am I looking at how can I drive my costs down? Not talking about pricing. I'm talking drive my costs down, and that's my focus. All right, so let's start with the simplest one. The top two are really probably all of them, except for the cost focus, tends to be pretty understandable. So our differentiation focus. Focus means we're in a niche market, but we're focusing on uniqueness, differentiation. We are our typical niche market when we think of a niche market, very, very small number of people we're selling to or market segments, very differentiated products, high quality products, typically less competition because I'm a small market. To the right of that, I'm still focusing on uniqueness, but I'm now mass market. So we're looking at mass market products that are distinct over competitors. So we're focusing again on quality over our cost. Now, cost is always important. Don't get me wrong. Businesses are not just not focusing on cost. However, the quality is really important. Branding is very important. We oftentimes charge premium prices to offset those higher production costs. I will say both have the ability to charge premium pricing, which is an advantage. So please pause the video. And at this point, in your template that you downloaded, please write a niche business that has a focus, differentiation focus. Give an example of a niche business in or around Columbus or in Ohio that has a niche focus. So differentiation focus, high quality, small market. Also, do the same for a differentiation model. What businesses out there have a differentiation competitive advantage where they're mass market, but they focus on distinct products over competitors? bring those to class. Let's jump down now to cost leadership. Cost leadership is to become the lowest cost producer in the industry. I have lowest cost producer underlined because we are not looking at lowest prices. We're looking at how can we be the lowest cost producer. Our aim is to minimize costs of production. But, here's our focus on cost over here, but we're looking at a mass market now. So we're looking at large scale businesses that utilize economies of scale, very little differentiation. And those are the types of businesses that will use that very large scale model to become the lowest cost producer and very like little kind of differentiation with quality over products, things like that. Finally, our cost focus. Again, the business is focused on cost. How can I lower my costs as much as possible? And I want to have that lower cost advantage over other businesses. But instead of being a mass market, I'm selling to a smaller market, smaller number of market segments. So oftentimes a very basic product, but it's going to be sold to smaller market segments and not in a mass market. So again, take a few minutes to pause, write examples of businesses that you know or can think of that fall within those Porter's generic strategies. So just to reiterate, we want to make sure we have 4 different businesses for each of these competitive advantages. Here's a common error. Take a moment to read this slide on the cost focus and differentiation focus. So where is our competitive advantage with each of these? This is where it becomes really important. If I have a cost leadership strategy, again, remember, I am looking at lowering my costs in a cost leadership strategy, mass production, mass scale even, using economies of scale. So economies of scale give us lower average costs, right? Lower average cost of production. That means I can do one of probably 2 things. I can price similarly as my competitors, but since my lower average cost of production are there, I should see higher profit margins and gross profit margins if you're really looking at your price minus your average variable costs. Or I can actually lower prices than my competitors, and then I have a huge competitive advantage because most customers would choose to take the lower price if it's the same types of products. Differentiation. Where's the competitive advantage? Well, now we're looking at uniqueness in a mass market. So I have that unique quality, so I can have premium prices with higher profit margins again. I also, on a perception or position map, would be probably seen as that high quality, high price quadrant. In keeping in mind, if I'm a mass market, I'm still probably benefiting from some economies of scale or a lot of economies of scale. And so I still have some benefits there as well, like I do above. Cost focus. Well, we're now looking at focusing on cost, but we're looking at a small market segment, small geographic areas, maybe small focus. This gives me control as a business. It's not one of those situations where maybe it gets to be confusing, hard to coordinate, hard to control. So this will give me a little bit more control while also trying to drive down costs. Differentiation focus is our typical niche market. Thinking of high premium prices with large profit margins, still have that control because it's a small market, but also think of that perception of quality where I can have that high price. Porter said it is not sustainable in the long term to adopt a mixture of these strategies. It's like he called it like stuck in the middle. It's not sustainable in the long term to adopt a mixture. It would confuse people. If I chose to have a differentiation, Porter's like a strategy, but all of a sudden I start to try to form cost leadership, now my quality may be deemed lower potentially. So not sustainable. Also, a lot of times it's harder for students to focus on or understand cost focus because it is one of the ones that's a little bit harder to sustain as well. Since you're not getting these typically large profit margins, well, you could be getting larger profit margins if your economies of scale is great, but you don't get a ton of economies of scale here. And that's what makes it hard because you're not necessarily having that mass market approach to focus on cost. You have to focus on it in other ways. Maybe thinking about not having packaging or different types of ways that storefronts look. So, thinking about that. Okay, so we're not going to do that. That is the end of the lesson. Please make sure when you know about a toolkit lesson that we have to think of it to the AO2 and AO4 level. So we have to be able to construct it. We have to be able to analyze strategies using it. And I need you to come into class with 4 examples on this template that should be downloaded into Notability.